How you guys doing today? Good?
Pretty good.
Where are we all from? Are anybody new today? Everybody new today? Lots of newbies? Cool. You're all from Waters class? Yeah, pretty much. That's the man I like right there. All right, so today we're going to talk about, I had this talk, it's called Startups 101, Idea to Launch. So we're basically going to look at how to make an idea and launch it into something that can be bigger than that, how to make a product, and how to really tackle the startup world. This is going to be really simple, but I think once you listen, you kind of go through some of the steps, you're going to be realizing that you might have made some mistakes along the way. There's some simple steps to make sure that you don't make some of the obvious mistakes. So we're going to be going over a couple things. First one, we're going to start with the idea. So we're going to be talking about how do you get the idea? Where do I start? What ideas should I go after? Then we're going to start talking about the team. What kind of team should I have? Who should be in my team? Should I do it by myself, or should I, get some other people involved? After that, we're going to talk about growth. So how do we expand? How do we find new markets? How do we establish some credibility in our market? We're going to talk about preparation. So making sure we're defensively ready, in case anybody wants to maybe harm our startup, if there's any problems, like lawyers getting sued, that's a big thing. Adaptation, so how do you change in the marketplace? How do you make sure you stay awake and you're moving, you're agile, you're keeping up to date with all the technologies that are going on. We're going to talk about capital really, really briefly, just to touch on that, just so you know what it's all about and what to expect. And then we're going to go ahead and kind of do some maybe exercises ourselves and talk about our startup ideas. So, you ready? Cool. And by the way, if you have any questions or any comments, or if what I'm saying is flat out wrong, totally call me out. Let's have a conversation about this tonight. Let's make it sure it's not just, me. So, let's talk about the idea. So, first thing I want you to think about when you're thinking of an idea is what speaks to you, right? What is a problem that you want to solve? And here's a big one. I don't want you to make up a problem. Okay, so think about those three things. The reason why I talk about that is because most likely the idea that's going to be good for you is going to be around an idea that's related to something that you really enjoy. Something, maybe it's a hobby of yours, or maybe you're studying it, or maybe you work around something related to this idea. So for instance, if you're a business major, you shouldn't be developing proteins in a lab for like a biomedical industry or something, right? Because you don't have any expertise in that. It doesn't make any sense. Same thing if you're a mechanical engineer or something, you probably shouldn't be, making people's logos unless you have a lot of experience doing that. So pick something that's related to you that you like, right? That's really, really important. More importantly, look at the problem-solving aspect of that, all right? Go through your day and figure out what problems you face on a usual day. What is something that would make your life easier? How can you address this problem and find a simple solution to it, right? So a good example is I saw somebody the other day, and they wanted to make a way to do mobile payment processing. So the whole point is you make a case, and maybe this case has a card slider on it, and you can slide your card through the case, and that would charge your credit card, right? But why do we really need that? I mean, first of all, there's already services like Square. Anybody heard of Square? It's a really, really cool little, there's a credit card reader that actually goes in your headphone port, and you can slide credit cards. Or forget that, why not just do online payment processing? If you want to transfer payments to somebody, do you really need that physical card? Is there a way we can take a step back? Do we have to make everything so complicated? So when you're thinking about your idea, think of simple ways to do that, all right? And the problem thing is really important. And take a look at that last bit. Don't invent a problem, right? Don't think, I really, really, really need an idea. Let's just find something and make it happen. Everybody downloads apps, right? Tell me somebody tell me an app they downloaded recently that they haven't touched in 2 weeks. Anybody got new ones? Your fart apps and your whatever else you're doing. Let's make up one right here, right? This is how you going? Snapchat? What's Snapchat? Is that the one where
You send pictures to friends.
and then doesn't it expire after you look at it or something? So that one's not useful for you. All right, so in the case of Snapchat, the whole point is they want to be able to let you message people directly without a text. And then also you can send a picture, and then that picture goes away, right, after you've seen it, or depending on what the settings are. But maybe in this case of this problem, maybe they were trying to create a solution for a problem that didn't exist. Are text messages really that expensive? Or in the case, you can use GChat on your phone, right? And that's free. You can get a hold of someone immediately. So do we really need another service that does that? And if you're going to make another service that does that, you have to differentiate it. And I think that's what they tried to do there, which makes sense. But you don't want to make up a problem. Find a problem that relates to you that would help your day. Because chances are if it helps you out, it helps somebody else out. And hey, now you got a business, right? Cool. So next, I just said this. If it helps you, it probably helps other people. That's a really, really key issue. So if, think about like a really good example is our vice president of Polyfounders. His name is Nick Sullivan. He recently started a biotech company called Abiotic Technologies. And long story short, to save you the boredom, in a lab, they have these machines that blow air over horizontally, right? And they're blowing air over the experiments because if you're having like a petri dish, right? Like if bacteria gets into that, just a little ounce of it, the whole experiment's ruined. So you're constantly blowing air over this petri dish to make sure that it's kept safe. But the thing is, the machines that do this are really expensive. They're like $8,000, and they're huge. They're like the size of this table right here. They're giant. So imagine if you're working in a tiny little lab with like 6 people in there, and 3 of you have to do experiments using this, what they call a laminar flow hood, right? That's a pain in the ass to first use that small space, but then what happens if you need more space to do more experiments? Like you're stuck. So he made a portable, lightweight, and low-cost version of it, and that's his startup. So it solves his problem. And it also solves a lot of other people's problems because if a university wants to make another one of these, they're going to have to plop down $8,000, where instead you can plop down a tenth of that and get an individual one that not only can you use for yourself, but you can take it home, do experiments at home. That could be kind of nice. You can take it with you other places. So it solves a problem for him. It also solves a problem for other people. But here's the big thing. Ideas are crap. Execution is everything, right? Probably one of the best examples of that. We'll talk about that later. Actually, we'll save that one. But I want you to watch this video by this guy. His name is Derek Sivers. He started a company called CD Baby. And when people were trying to get on iTunes and try to share their music, before iTunes exactly, he was trying to get people to have their albums on his website. So it was a new way to get music before iTunes was around. So he made his money doing CD Baby, very smart guy. And he's going to talk about ideas versus execution.
Execution. A friend of mine said, hey, I met this really good entrepreneur. I really want you to meet him. He's got a really good idea. He's got a really brilliant business idea. And I want him to run it by you, or he wants to run it by you. I told him I'd introduce you. So I said, all right. He, CC'd me on the email, so now it was too late for me to say no. So I met with this guy and said, okay, what's your idea? And he said, well, I've got this killer idea. This is like $1 billion idea. This is huge. But I need you to sign this non-disclosure agreement first, because it's $1 billion idea. I can't, if you hear this idea, you'll see it's massive. This is huge. So you need to sign this non-disclosure agreement before I tell you my idea. So ordinarily I wouldn't do this, but we had this mutual friend and I was on the spot socially. So I was like, all right, there you go. Here's your non-disclosure agreement. What's this great idea? He said, okay, you ready? Online dating with music. And I went, yeah. And he said, that's it. It's online dating with music. This could be huge. This is like $1 billion idea, man. So I just figured, like, if you can make it, like if you could just program this thing up, you get the website going, you just get it happening, and get some people to run this thing. I'm the idea guy. So we'll go 50-50 on this since I came up with the idea, and you make it happen. And I said, wait, is there any more to it than this? Do you have any details, any plan for how this is going to work? And he said, dude, online dating with music. Duh, this is huge. I said, okay, hold on. I've got to back up here. You're missing the point on something. I said, let me draw you a little chart. And I grabbed a pen and a piece of paper, and I said, okay, let's say that we give a value to the worth of an idea. Let's say, and let's put bad ideas -1. Average idea, we'll give it a 5. Great ideas, let's give it a 15. An amazing idea, let's give it a 20. Okay? Now, execution. No execution, let's give it a value of $1. Average execution, value of $10,000. Good execution, $100,000. An amazing execution, value of $10 million, right? The point is, to make a business, you need to multiply the two. So your amazing idea with no execution That's not worth $1 billion. That's worth $20 because you haven't done anything about it. Without doing anything, it's just $20. I'll pay for the Cokes that we're drinking right now. And now, if you have even a good idea with good execution, you can maybe make $1 million. And if you have an amazing idea with great execution, you can make $20 million. But ideas on their own are just a multiplier. They're worth nothing without the execution. So that's why when people always want to tell me their business idea, I just say, I don't want to hear the idea. I just want to see the execution. That's where the real value is.
So does that make sense? You get that? And a really good example of this is, I'm guessing a lot of us are business majors, right? Let me take a stab. Are business majors? Raise your hand if you're business. Like a good amount. The peril of the business major is the business major who has the great idea, but he can do nothing to make sure it happens. He can do nothing to invent it. A great example is, I was dating this girl, and her dad comes up to me, right? And he says, hey, Andrew, I got this great business idea for you. And this is like a year ago or so, right? Or 2 years ago. And he's like, here's what's going to happen. We're going to make this app. And the app is find where you parked your car. So, you go out to this garage, you don't know where you parked, you make a spot on your smartphone saying where you parked, and then when you leave, you can come back and know exactly where you parked. Right? Sound like an interesting idea? Sure. The thing is, this had already been done 10,000 times. There are apps all over Android, iOS, everything to make apps like that. They already existed. And the second part was he wanted 60% of this company because he just had the idea. I would have to, if I wanted to do this, I would have to code it, I'd have to market it, I'd have to design it, I'd have to find a team, I'd have to send it out to people, I'd have to pay to get on all the iOS stores and license fees and all that. Is that worth 40% for a guy who just had an idea? No, right? Because really good entrepreneurs have multiple good ideas. They don't sit on one idea and just let it fester in their mind. And it's not that big of a deal. It's just an idea. You can move on from that idea at any time. And I want you to keep that in mind. Is if you're going to be coming up with an idea, how are you going to turn that into reality? And how are you going to become someone who's not just that average business dude, the idea dude? Don't be the idea guy. Do not do that. So let's go into examples. Here's a good example of idea versus execution. So let's say this is 4 years ago, right? I want to make a photo sharing app. The photo sharing app is only going to be mobile, so only on your phone. It's going to have filters, so it can make your pictures look sexy. You see what I'm going on? What is this? This is Instagram. And what did Instagram sell for? $1 billion, just like Justin Timberlake, except with the likes, it's money. Or no, he did say $1 billion is cool, yeah. But the point being is that if you had told me that you wanted to make a picture sharing app that was only mobile and the only fancy thing was that it used filters, I would have said, go home, leave me alone. It's not interesting. It's been done. What's different than just sending you a text message, right? But what Instagram did was their execution of it was awesome. They killed their execution. Anybody use Instagram? Anybody tried it at all? Really good product, right? It's really easy to use. Pictures look great. You can capture all your friends really easily. And that's why they were worth $1 billion, because for Facebook, they were tackling a market that Facebook could not get. Facebook has been struggling to get people on their mobile apps and on their mobile website. Even though they have a lot of people on there, they're struggling to find ways to make money off of it. And that the bottom line was Instagram was taking away their presence. And they were becoming a better social network. Yes?
If I remember correctly, Instagram wasn't originally a photo sharing app. It was
No, you're right.
its own dedicated social network, I think, that
Mhm.
was kind of piggybacking on Facebook.
Yeah.
And they realized the major feature that people were using were photos. So they just kind of pivoted and switched over to just pure photos.
And I like the use of the word pivot. We're actually going to go into some examples like that. But that's a really good example, and we can talk about that later, is how what your idea you originally think it's going to be probably isn't what it's going to end up going to be. So keep that in mind. But thank you for bringing that up. That's a great one. So let's talk a little bit more about the team. All your friends and family that are going to be around you. You're going to be living in each other's houses and working 7 weeks a day, and you're going to be sick of each other. Who's going to be on that team that you guys hang around with all the time? So going back to that terrible business major who wants to make an app that he can't make. Here's an example, right? And keeping in mind teams, who consists of this team? So if somebody comes to me and they say, hey, I want to make an app. It's going to be a mobile app. Actually not an app. I'm going to make a case. It's going to protect your phone. It's going to be really awesome. It's going to have all these great designs. It's going to have lights. It's going to have lights on it. And it's going to be battery powered. It's going to have batteries so you can have your phone last longer. And on top of that, it's going to have a finger scanner. No, wait. It's going to have a retinal scanner on it, right? Oh, but tell me, that's amazing. How have you made this technology? Who's a part of your team? Oh, well, I have 4 business majors. No, don't do that. Don't get caught in that trap. Because if you're 4 business majors, most likely you don't have the expertise to go and manufacture something like that. It's not easy to do. You can do it. Can you do it? Absolutely. But the point being is we're trying to figure out how to make this more realistic, more simple, how to dumb it down. You can be, 2 business majors and find 2 mechanical engineers, or maybe 1 mechanical engineer, 1 materials engineer or something, and make it. That's going to make it a lot easier, and your team's going to be stronger because of that. I'm not saying no, it can't happen, but I'm saying think about where your skills lie. So that's really important for when you're building a team. You want to make sure you diversify your needs. So if you're making a website, if that's your technology, a website, you want to make sure that somebody on your team can build websites. Probably has some experience with graphic design, can make sure they update it and modify it and change it when necessary. Especially if you're having technology that relies on some type of customization. Just the average run-of-the-muck template is not going to do it for you. You're going to need something custom made, right? So you're going to need someone to make that for you. You can learn it yourself, sure, but you're going to need somebody to have those skills. And more importantly, you're going to need those complementary skills. So you're going to want to find people that do things differently than you. If there's 3 of you, or if you're a team of 3 and all 3 of you are athletes, or all 3 of you are introverts, or all 3 of you are huge party animals or something. You want to find different skills because when you get different perspectives, it really changes your business, and you get the perspectives of other people, right? If everybody in your team is the same, you're only really getting the opinion of one person. Does that kind of make sense? We kind of agree with that? Like, for instance, I have a web development company. I've had it for the past 3 years, and my co-founder, he's the total opposite of me. Total opposite. And it drives me nuts sometimes because he doesn't get where I'm coming from. He doesn't understand. He's all about developing and coding and programming and being, making sure that the customer is exactly happy with this. And where I'm just like, let's get it out there. But I want this designed this certain way. I want to make sure these aesthetics are in place. I want to use this font. And he's just like, who cares about the font? Let's just put times on it. It doesn't matter. So we have these little battles with each other all the time. But at the end of the day, it makes our product better. That's really important, is you want someone to kind of argue with. You don't want to get in fights, but you want someone to kind of change your opinion. At least open up the door. Be devil's advocate. That's important. And I also think, just like I said before, the co-founder should be able to build on your startup. This is really important. I've seen a bunch of startups where the technology, what they're trying to build, that technology, can't be built by any of the co-founders, and I think that's kind of a problem. You can always hire people to make what you're looking for. You can always outsource it. But here's a good example is code. If just the basic gist of coding is, it's basically like writing, and it's writing in a foreign language. So when you make something and you outsource that code to somebody, let's say you make it in a month, and then 3 months down the line you have to change that code, but you outsourced it, right? So there's a good chance actually you might not be able to work with that same guy. So when you come in with a new guy who's going to be working on your code, he has to go through the whole list of code that's already been written, and he has to understand it first. And all he sees is gibberish. He has to understand what that person was doing, which means lost time. He's not familiar with the product. He has to relearn everything. It's very tough. So outsourcing is a really, really good idea when possible, but for building your core team, think about having those people who can do those skills in the first place. So a really tough thing to do, though, is acquire team members. How do you get those awesome people that you're looking for? For business majors, how do we get that computer scientist? If we're an engineer, how do I get that marketing guy? How do I get all these things, right? And the key thing is you want to show your strengths. You want to show something that you've already built. I want you to take the initiative to do as much as you can. For me, I'm a business major, but I've taught myself graphic design. So when it comes to making a prototype of something or a website or an app or something, I can just go ahead and design it. I don't have the skills to program it, but if I wanted to find a programmer, what I could do is show them, hey, this is the layout of what I think should happen, and here's what I think should happen when you press this button and that button. And so it makes the idea more realistic. I've made it tangible now. Does that kind of make sense? So you want to do as much as you can to make it possible. If you don't have any of these skills, technical skills to make something, maybe you're calling up local businesses to see if they'd be interested. Maybe you're getting some type of reports about are people really willing to buy this? How much money are they willing to spend? Do they really need this in the real world? So you need to be doing as much as you can to make sure that this is a possible reality. You want to have a plan. So as I mentioned before, not only is it important to build things, but you want to have an idea of how this business is going to grow. Like, where are we going to get our users? Who are we going to talk to? How much money is it going to cost to start this? Plan is really, really important. Once again, it's about showing something realistic to the people that you're trying to come along and bring on board. And kind of as mentioned before, do as much as you can now. So make sure you acquire, if you don't acquire the skills, you at very least hustle, you do something to make sure that this idea comes to reality as best as you possibly can. So how do we sustain a team, though? That can be kind of a tough thing. For instance, we're all in college, right? What happens when one of us graduates? What happens when one of us gets really caught up with their quarter and they just don't have time for it anymore? It can be really tough to sustain these teams that we've built. And of course, if we can sustain a team, we have a better startup. I think that would make sense, right? It's probably a better idea to have the same consistent team than change members all the time, I would think, right? So we want to make sure that we set the standards and the tone. So we know more importantly, what everyone's responsibilities are. People need to know what they are going to be doing in this startup. They need to know what their role is. Who's going to be making the calls? Who's going to be in charge of social media? Who's in charge of answering customer service? Who's in charge of making the pitch to talk to investors? Who's going to call up the company to get the business cards made? If you're sitting around waiting for somebody else to do it, nothing's going to get done. So it's really important that you make sure that everyone knows what they're supposed to do. Who's going to code this? Who's going to develop this? Who's going to design that? All right? And if people have responsibilities to do, most likely they're going to get more involved in the startup, going to be more likely to continue on with it, and most likely your startup's going to be more successful. And here's the last one, which I want you to be aware of. I want you to mind your equity. So when you're starting a company, everyone has equity. Does everybody know what equity is? So you have a stake in this company. You own a percentage of this company. Usually all co-founders mean they own a stake in this company. In fact, polyfounders comes from the name co-founder, right? So you're a founder of a company. That's what we are with polyfounders. So when you're hiring people, you want to use the equity as an advantage. Does anybody have money here to hire somebody to start a company right now? Anybody balling it up? I'm looking for a job? No? So since you don't have money, what you do have is this made-up percentage number, which is called equity. So what you want to start doing is you're going to have to offer people equity. You're going to say, Matt, I want you to join my company. Here's what's going to be happening. I have 3 other guys. We're all going in together as equal partners. Actually, so there's 3 of us, and we want you to join on board. As equal partners, we're all going to have a 25% stake in this company. Does that sound fair to you? And you would say, yes or no, or maybe you could haggle with me. Oftentimes what happens if you started a startup, maybe we work on a company for a couple months and we find, man, we really need somebody to do our marketing, right? But they're not going to have a huge involvement, and also it's a little bit later in the company stage. So maybe you only offer them 5% or 10%. So use equity, though, as a way to keep people invested. Because if they are part of something, if they own this company, they're going to work hard to make sure they stay involved in this company and they see it succeed. Because if the company succeeds, they're going to get a lot of money in the end, right? That's the whole goal. And investing is something interesting. Has anybody heard the term vesting? You familiar with it? The real simple way to understand vesting is earning your equity over time. So a really good example is when you get bought out by a company, a lot of times you'll hear that, for instance, like with the Instagram guys, they got bought out by Facebook, but they don't just go ahead and acquire $1 billion. It doesn't just go in their pocket because they're actually working at Facebook. So they have to vest their time at Facebook. So probably, for example, a good idea might be maybe 2 years. So whatever they were bought out for, they have to work at Facebook for 2 years to earn their stake of what they're trying to do, earn their equity, earn their money, earn their shares of stock or what have you. So vesting involves earning your equity over time. And that's really important for new hires as well. If you're bringing in some guy, someone new, and you've been established for 6 months or something like that, you don't want someone to come and you can't just give them 10% and then they can just run and leave, right? You have to make them earn it. And that's how you get people to stay long term. You make them invest. And the last thing is fire fast and move on. It's the reality of it. As a startup, you got to be really agile. You got to be quick. You got to be moving all the time. One of the things that's really popular you might hear about is called the lean startup. Anybody heard of that? Lean startup, basically the mentality is just move quick, get things going, make products quickly, move on quickly. And another thing is, fire fast quickly. If somebody isn't working out, just dump them and move on. You don't have time to be wasting about, figuring out if this person's going to work or not. I mean, I think it's going to be fairly obvious if it's a good fit or not in a month or so. So don't drag your feet trying to make something work if it shouldn't. Fire fast, move on, get on with it. And then the last thing is going forward. Your team sets the tone, so make sure it's a good one. If you're all, if you only meet once a week, you only meet for a couple hours, you're all procrastinating, nothing gets done, guess what's going to happen for the next 2 years? Exact same thing. Right? So sometimes I can be a procrastinator, so I like people who kind of keep me in check now and then. Sometimes I'll work my ass up, but sometimes I just get caught up in a rut. And so it's important to have people keeping you in check. But if everyone I know is a procrastinator, then forget it. You guys aren't doing junk this week. You're not making anything. No startup is happening in your life. You're not making money. And effectively, you're wasting your time. You might as well be working a day job. So whatever tone you set, that's your company culture. That's really important. And the people who are in the company in the beginning definitely set a tone in that culture. So let's go talk about growth for a bit. Just a couple short slides. The important thing you want to worry about when you're first making your product and you're looking to expand is making what we call a minimum viable product, an MVP. You're going to hear that a lot, MVP. Anybody know what that means? Minimum viable product? Anybody got an idea? What it means is you make the smallest amount of the startup possible to make it work. So I had an idea for a social network last year that I almost started, but I ended up backing out of it. And the idea was basically to make this closed network for college students, kind of like what Facebook was like 7 years ago. The whole point being is you log in with your email address, and then based on your likes from Facebook, we would take all your likes and interests from Facebook, put those on our website, and then you would only get shown content based on those likes about the university. So you'd find out about all the cool events going on, you'd find out about weird Cal Poly confessions and people, cool, interesting people and whatever, just based upon your likes, and it would all be automatically done. And instead of, the big thing was the events, right? I was so tired of hearing about an event that I missed out on. Like, for instance, one of the VPs of Samsung was here last year and I missed out on it. And I don't even know what I would tell him, but I want to meet the VP of Samsung. That's awesome. So if I had had this product, though, it would have probably automatically sent me information about local events that are coming up. Because has anybody looked at the front page of the Cal Poly website, on the calendar? Have you tried to use that? It's a joke. It's horrible. I mean, you might have to go look at it later. But it's just 10,000 things going on every day. How in the world are you going to possibly find what you're looking to, do? So the minimum viable product of that would have been find 5 to 10 people and every day email them something interesting that would be interesting to them that's going on campus. So I'm not building anything. I'm effectively making the product to see if it works because they're getting information about what's going on campus. And I can get feedback immediately without having spent any money to develop some software. And if I find out that no one really wants this service, then I just move on. So you want to make something as minimum as possible for the point being that you can move quickly. Remember, we're all about moving quickly, fire fast. Also, change products fast, move quickly. A good example of a minimum viable product is this company Falcon. They were actually one of the companies, the startups we had last quarter. On the right, this is their first product. This is the original version they programmed up. Terrible fonts, colors, their locations don't exist, cool pool, car, the whole point of their application was that it's supposed to, if you play Grand Theft Auto and you're looking on the map and it's telling you go in this direction to find this achievement. In this case of this app, anyway, if maybe you want to find the library, it tells you the library is in this direction. So you turn your phone, follow the direction, and then you go towards the library. So it's really good for finding classes. Theirs was at UCLA. They also did this at Burning Man, at Coachella, at all these events. You could find the stages going on. So it points you in the right direction. So their first version was super ugly. Had nothing really great to talk about. The colors were a mess. The locations were fake. But the point is they made something that worked. They made something that was actually a working product. And so this was their MVP. And after they decided they liked that, they got some use out of it, they decided to touch it up in Photoshop, make something nice, and that became the one on the left. And funny story about that is the guy who made that wasn't a graphic designer. He was I think he was a business student, and he just forced himself to learn how to do it to make it work. And the programmer was not a programmer. He forced himself to do it as well. So really good hustle on those guys' part. But for growth, you should definitely focus on finding communities that would like your startup. So in their case, things that would work well for Falcon is those big events where you're trying to find something like a stage or a classroom or some public location. So you want to find those communities where those where whatever you've made is going to be important and useful for people, and get involved, get in touch. People are flexible; they're willing to listen. So you want to make sure you get involved and talk to those people and see what their needs are and see how they use the product. Get feedback on the product and always adjust. And the last thing is you really want to connect with your audience. A great example of this is, has anybody heard of Minecraft? Minecraft, yeah? Cool. So Minecraft is it's kind of like Legos, right? You're basically building things with building blocks online. And it started off being made by this guy named Notch. That was like his handle. He made it by himself when he was working at a company doing game development. And he made this on the side. This was like maybe 2009. And he started making this game. And what he really did, what was really cool, is he always connected with his community. He would ask people what they thought about the game. He would get feedback about it. And he would integrate the feedback into the game. Like, hey, I think this item should be in the game. And then he would put it in. So there was always a lot of communication going on about how this game should be improved, how it can be better. And he listened to them. Long story short, he ended up starting, by himself. He made this game all alone. The game, I think this year his company made over $200 million. They've sold over 20 million copies. He has a whole list of people who now work for him. He has this huge office just because he focused in an industry where people weren't really listening. He made sure he listened, and in turn, he got a lot of good support from that. They sell about 10,000 copies every day. And this is not an EA. This is one guy by himself. Of course, he's got help now, but it only takes one. And that goes along with being personable, be relatable. If you're in an industry where there's not really a face to something, for instance, what's a company that just really bores you, which is give me a company that's just really boring and dull, and they just look like a big conglomerate. They don't look like a person. Can anybody think of one? Oracle? That's a good example. When I think of Oracle, I think of Larry Ellison. He's just at the top on his throne, just looking down at all his minions, saying I'm so rich. But in the case of Oracle, they make a ton of software. In fact, they make the dreaded PeopleSoft, I think that's right, who does Bronco Direct and all that terrible software. Yeah, so everyone's making nasty faces right now. When you think of Oracle, though, you think of big enterprise-level software. Imagine if you were a big programming company. In their case, you're a competitor to them, but you were really personable. You actually listened to some of the problems, and you got actual responses back to it. Anytime you can kind of add a touch of personalization to your business, you're probably going to get a better chance of succeeding because people are going to know who they're dealing with. They're going to know that you're listening to them. And that's really important as a startup. You can't start out being an Oracle. You might be able to, but it's better off, I think, on the long run to be personal. I think that's a great, and social media is obviously a really good start for that, but it definitely helps to be personal. So let's talk about preparation. This is just something I want to touch up really quickly, and I'm just going to throw these up right now. Patents and intellectual property. So when it comes to making your startup, a way to be defensive is to have things like patents and to own your own and be aware of your intellectual property. Intellectual property is basically it's basically what you've created, an intangible thing that you've created. So if you've designed a website, some of the IP could be the code or the design. So you want to make sure you protect that. You don't want people stealing your stuff and pretending to look like you. But while we're at it, for the most part, I want to convince you to not worry about IP and patents just yet. The reason being, especially if you're a software company or if you're anything but a physical product, I would definitely avoid it. The reason being is some people are so consumed with the idea of having a patent, so consumed with their IP, is they never get their idea off the ground. To start and actually get a patent can cost $20,000. It can cost a lot of money because you have to go through lawyers, you have to wait a long time. You have to go through the patent office. So it takes a lot of time, it costs a lot of money, and most of the time what happens is people don't benefit from it. They don't really get their idea protected. They spend so much time focusing on their idea that they don't actually build it. And here's the other thing. If you get sued, if Microsoft sues you tomorrow, and they sue you for $20 million because they claim that you infringed upon something, even though you didn't, you still have to go to court. You still have to defend yourself, even if you didn't break any of the rules. And guess what? To fight somebody like Microsoft is going to cost you, what, a couple of $100,000? So who cares about the patent anymore? Even if you were right, you might not have the ability to support yourself if you get sued regardless, even if you're in the right. So to start a patent, to file the initial paperwork for the patent is not too expensive. It can be like a couple $100. It's a good idea to get started if you're really, really, really worried about it. But don't get consumed with intellectual property and your patents just yet. Be aware of them, study them, but don't get consumed with it because you'll waste your time. In fact, a lot of reasons why people get investors is not to build their company, it's to make sure that they don't get sued. And if they do get sued, it's so they can pay the bill. It's really rough. So just something to think about. Be wary of it. Don't focus just on that. So let's talk about adaptation. And this is going to go into pivoting. So we're going to focus on that for a bit.
I think Pringle's initial intention was to make tennis balls. But on the day that the rubber was supposed to show up, a big truckload of potatoes arrived. And Pringles said, "What the hell? Cut them up."
So when you have a product that you think should be used a certain way, or you think it's going to be, your product life cycle and the growth of it's going to go a certain way, chances are it's going to go the complete opposite. And you have to be able to grow and adapt. A really good example of this is actually Cristal. Anybody familiar with Cristal? It's like champagne. It's in all like the rap videos and stuff like that. Everyone's spraying it all over the supermodels. Cristal and the rap community had a really, really weird relationship because Cristal was this established brand. It was really expensive. It was really posh. It was really fantastic, right? Only the select can get it. But then all the rappers found out about it and were like, hell yeah, we got that Cristal too. And so what happened was there was a problem, and Cristal began to realize that the wrong crowd was using their product, and they didn't like it. They got freaked out by it. And so their CEO said some controversial stuff. And long story short is Jay-Z heard about it and got pissed. And if you know Jay-Z, he's got a lot of power, not only in the music community, but he also owns a ton of clubs. So he stopped serving at his clubs, stopped talking about his music. He got a lot of people to boycott it. And in fact, the guy who owned Cristal, he openly said, we don't really want the music in our product. I'm sure they have some competitors like Don Perignon or Krug to take their business. And guess what? They did. And so because Cristal wasn't able to adapt, and they didn't want to adapt, their sales have been actually down by quite a lot since about 2006. So this is a good case of somebody not adapting. Sometimes it's rough, but the reality is you got to embrace who's giving you the cash. They're still going to probably be okay, but it's an untapped market that they failed to take advantage of. And here's kind of a fun one. I've got a couple of these coming up, and I want to talk about pivoting. So pivoting means when you take your idea and you kind of shift it. You shift what's going on, and this happens all the time. Just in the case of Instagram, they started out doing something and they made a pivot. So they changed what they thought was important. They changed their product. So you're going to find that in your idea, whether it's something just for like a class or if it's something that you want to become your entire business, most likely you're going to pivot. You're going to be working on it. You're going to realize, man, this would just be better if I did this differently. Or maybe your users are going to start checking out your startup and they're going to find another way to use it differently. Or you might have 10 features and they only use one. So you focus on that one. So I got kind of a little game for you guys. This is the game NEVERENDING. It was a massively multiplayer online role-playing game. I'm not sure how exactly old it is. It's probably like 10, 15 years old. But this game was originally one of these. Or one of these was originally this game. So we got World of Warcraft, which is a really popular video game. We have Google Maps, the mapping service to find where you need to go. We have Foursquare, which is a check-in service that you use on your phone to say where you are. We have Flickr. One of these guys was originally this. Which one do you think it is? Got two? You think Google Maps? What else? Google Maps?
Foursquare.
Foursquare? Suckers. Gotcha. It's Flickr. Want to know why? Because this game, the game NEVERENDING, was originally this MMORPG, and they wanted to make some software on top of it for people to exchange pictures. And they found out that that was so useful that people loved that the most that it eventually became Flickr. And so the parent companies for both Flickr and the game NEVERENDING were the ones that switched over. I mean, this wasn't ever called Flickr, but the company who made this decided, hey, this is way more important, way more interesting, we got more growth. Let's go ahead and start Flickr. Number two, this is a rice cooker. Electronic rice cooker made in like the 1940s, 1950s, after World War II. One of these companies, this was their first product. So KitchenAid, they make a lot of appliances. You might have heard about them. Sony make a lot of electronics, like TVs, video games. General Electric, a lot more appliances, but also focusing on electronics. They make engines as well. And Hitachi is another brand. They make televisions as well as some other appliances. So what do we think for this one? Hitachi. Suckers. I got you again. Sony. So the original founder of Sony, this is one of the first products he ever made, and it failed. It didn't work. But he tried to make it work. You know, he moved on. They obviously diversified, and they became okay. But for all you know, this could have been your rice cooker. It's kind of weird, right? I got two more for you. This is a playing card. This is Ace of Spades. You got the brand covered up right here. Got four companies. First one's Nintendo, major video game manufacturer and console designer. McGraw-Hill, who makes textbooks. You might have had some of their textbooks and overpaid ridiculously and never been able to sell them back. Milton Bradley, maker of a lot of board games, right? We know Milton Bradley. And then Hasbro make a lot of toys. What do we think? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. I hear lots of like. Sounds like some like creepy, scary movie. What? Give me your fingers. Show me. Let me see. Yeah. Oh, those aren't going away. What's going to do? Well, anyway, this says Nintendo. You have to believe me. But that was Nintendo. They first started making playing cards before they made video games. Kind of crazy, right? And this is, you have to keep in mind, many, 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 many years before they really hit it out of the park. So a lot of companies really struggle for a long time before they figure it out. And here's the last one. This is a rubber boot. This company still actually produces rubber boots. Vans, who make a lot of skate shoes. North Face, who make a lot of apparel for the cold, really solid clothing. Burberry, like kind of a high-end luxury clothing company. And Nokia, Swedish cell phone manufacturer. What do you think? Give me your numbers. Where are we at? Oh, you want to play the game now? All right. You win. Nokia. Nokia. And if you look, you can see closely it says Nokian. Nokian is the rubber boots manufacturer that was a part of Nokia and split off, like 20, 30 years ago. But originally, they made rubber boots. Kind of weird, right? So this is an example of how your company can change. And almost every major company has changed drastically, especially the companies who made it to the top. They've all made crazy changes, and it's really interesting to learn about that. But the important thing is, don't be too attached to one idea. Be flexible. Be willing to be open. Be willing to change. And listen to your customers. See what they want. A lot of major manufacturers, you go back to the Hondas and the BMWs, especially around the World War II time, they were making any device they could to help the war. And when they were done, the chances are the device they made before the war was not the same they made after the war. But they just made it because it was what was in demand. So make sure you're thinking about what can be changed, how you can make your business, your idea stronger. So the last section is capital. I don't have anything too much to talk about this one, but the big thing I want to get across on capital is when I'm talking capital, I'm talking investments, the big term investments. Actually, I have an episode of a brief bit of Shark Tank if you guys want to watch that. You guys ever watch Shark Tank?
Great show.
You guys want to watch? It's like 10 minutes. We can watch it after this. And we'll talk about the valuations of the companies and then see if we think they're going to get funding or not. We can guess and see what happens. So let's do that after this really fast. But who wants some money for their startup? You want some money?
I do.
Want some money? How much money do you want? $1 million? Just $1 million?
I'll take 10.
10? Okay, 10's good. a lot of people want money for their startups, and it's totally doable. You can get it. The more leverage you have in terms of the quality of your team, the idea that you have, the execution, how many followers you have, the market you're in, the growth that you have, can all affect that. And you can definitely get that kind of money. It's not unheard of. There's two types of investments and two types of people that we're looking for in terms of investors. And one is called angel investors, the other one's called venture capitalists. Angel investors start in the beginning. Angel investors start when ideas are very young. So most likely, if you guys have an idea, you'll be talking to an angel investor, not a venture capitalist. So they like to invest seed money, like a small amount, maybe like 50 to 300,000, 500,000, something like that. And they like to get started early. In return for an investment, you have to give up equity. And that's what you're going to see in Shark Tank if you guys want to watch that. People are going to say, I want this amount of money for this much equity. And this is where the heated battle comes, because somebody might like your idea, but they don't like your valuation. Because if you say, I want $100,000, I'll give you 25% for $100,000, that means your company is valued at $400,000, because 25% of $400,000 is $100,000. So your valuation that you set in terms of how much people pay for equity defines how much your company is worth. And in the case of Shark Tank, you see a lot of people who come up and they say, I will give you 5% for $300 million or something, like, this crazy, like $300,000, let's say. And that's just an insane amount of money. It's millions of dollars. And if you don't have any sales, you don't have any traction, you can't just make it up. You have to prove your worth. So in the case of capital, it's really, really important to notice that the investment that gets put into it, it demands equity in return. And however much money people pay for that equity determines how much your company is worth. But there's two different types of money before we go on. I want you to consider this, that if you're writing anything down, write down that all money is not equal. All money is not equal. And the case of the Shark Tank is really, really good, because you're going to find that if you watch these investors, sometimes some people want to work with other investors and avoid others. So somebody give me an industry. Somebody give me an industry, random industry. Food. Okay, food. Let's say I'm making frozen burritos. They're really, really awesome. This is a terrible business idea already, but frozen burritos. So frozen burritos, and I need an investor. I have the idea. I have the recipe. I know how to freeze it. I know how to make it awesome when you put it in the microwave for 10,000 minutes and it explodes all everywhere. I know how to make this, but the thing is, I need an investment now, okay? We probably want a lot of money. Sometimes it's a bad idea to ask for too much, because then you give up too much of your company as well. If you only need 100,000, don't ask for 500,000. But the thing is, $150,000 from your grandpa who knows nothing about starting a startup versus $75,000 for a guy who's worked in like food supply chains his entire life. He knows all the biggest players around. Like the value of that money is different. Grandpa doesn't have any contacts. He can't get me anywhere. That money is only money. It's just stuff I can add to my bank account. In the case of the $75,000 with a good contact, he has the possibility and the potential to leapfrog my business, because now I can get the contacts that I wanted to get. So when we watch Shark Tank, you're going to see some people battle over things. And I have the episode. I don't remember exactly what the arguments are, but a really good one, for instance, is there's one shark, and she works for QVC. And so anytime anyone has like a made-at-home, like TV, seen on TV type of product, like a Snuggie type thing, she wants in because she knows she can sell that on QVC. Having said that, if it's an internet website, who cares about QVC? You don't go buy stuff on an internet website via QVC. It doesn't make any sense. Like, you're not going to go log into Facebook. You're not going to sign up for Facebook via QVC, right? So you want to make sure if you're looking for an investment, you make sure that that investor can give you value. And that's something we have to look out for also in Los Angeles. This is really important. Everybody knows what goes up north in the Bay. What is it called? Silicon Valley, right? Over here they try to call it Silicon Beach. I'm not sure if I really like that term. It's kind of cheesy. But the thing is, for many years, for decades, Silicon Valley has been making some of the best startups around. Los Angeles, on the other hand, hasn't necessarily been making the best startups, but they make the best entertainment. Both require a lot of money. The people who give those money, though, who give up that money, though, are very different. Let's take a look at a movie. What's a movie you guys like?
Dark Knight.
Dark Knight. So The Dark Knight must have cost a ton of money, like hundreds of millions of dollars, right, to make? So in order for that company to plop down and invest, let's say $100 million, even though it's probably wrong, $100 million, they know I'm going to invest $100 million. The movie's going to be done in 3 years. It's going to go to box offices all over the world. It's going to make me, $1 billion in return. They know that that's like sure investment for them. They know how long it's going to take. They know everything required. There's very little humps and lumps involved. It's going to be very straightforward. Having said that, in Silicon Valley, people are used to taking really risky investments. They're used to investing in something where it's very young and hoping that it gets big. And they wait. They're very patient, and they know that it needs time to grow and prosper. In the case of like YouTube, for instance, right? YouTube has been losing money since day one. It is a bad business because to host videos requires a ton of bandwidth, requires a ton of storage. It's really, really, really expensive. And if it wasn't for Google, they would probably be dead, or they would be all super, super, super broke. So when Google came involved, they knew that it was going to cost a ton of money to take in this company, but they also knew that the reward in the long term was much better for them. So that's why they took them in. When we look at the investors, LA versus Silicon Valley, just as an example, most likely the investors from LA are going to be expecting movie-like investments, short-term, quick, obvious return. They know the timeline, no humps and bumps, straightforward. Whereas the Silicon Valley investor sees, hey, let's take our time, let's be patient, let's wait it out. They're not knocking on the door for money all the time. Now, this is not true everywhere. There are some great investors down here, but that's something to consider. The area of investments is very, very different down here than it is up north. So if you're looking for investors, that's why so many people like to go up north, because they know that culture it kind of accentuates and helps their startup a little bit better than it would maybe down here. So let's take a look at Shark Tank while we're at it. Let's see if I can get this to work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this, and I'm going to let the entrepreneur speak. And after they speak, they're going to probably ask for some type of figure, like I'm asking for this amount of money at this price. And we're going to listen to their pitch, and then we're going to kind of give some opinions about what we think is going to happen, and then we're going to watch and see what happens at the very end. Sound good? Can everybody